Alright, in this tutorial we'll cover dealing with loops and using them to process sets or collections or groups of records. In our previous example, we retrieved a record and sent an email with it, which is great, but not particularly productivity enhancing. It would be much more interesting if the flow could send a whole bunch of emails and so that we didn't have to do it, because if we only had to send one, we might just find it just as easy to do it ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with create a new flow based on this one. So just like we've done in the past, let's create a brand new flow using the existing flow. It's worth mentioning that reuse of things like these resources can be quite useful. So look for an opportunity to start from an existing flow when you're starting a new project. Okay, working with multiple records and loops. Okay, part of Alex Ed's flow lessons. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to change our retrieval to get not just one record, but more than one record. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the fact that we've got several contacts that are all part of one account, which is a pretty conventional concept in Salesforce. So we've got this account called Boyle Family, and Boyle Family has 3 different contacts. And one of them is the Susan Ferris contact that we used. And here are a couple other examples of contacts, and they're all associated with the account. So what I want to do is I want to retrieve all 3 of these contacts and then send a custom email to each one. So we're going to have to create a different record here. Okay, so let's change this. We're going to retrieve multiple contacts for an account. All right, so we're still getting records. We're still getting contact records, so that's fine. But we're looking for a different set of conditions now. We're no longer interested in first name and last name. We can't actually delete this, but we can change it. So what we care about is this. We care about account ID. So I'm going to hard code this for my demonstration by going to the Boyle Family account, and I'm going to go right up here to the URL. I'm going to grab the ID. Now later on we'll see how to make the flow. It's generally a bad idea to use hard-coded IDs in flows. It's almost never a good idea. Only lazy product managers who are building demos get away with this for long. So don't do as I'm doing here. Pretend that you are not seeing me. Actually look for all contacts where account ID equals this value. Okay, now this time we do expect more than just one record. We get this choice here because sometimes you only want the first record from a set, but in this case we do want all of the records. And so we're going to need to create a temporary storage variable like we did in the previous lesson to store these contacts. Now in Flow, sets of records are called collections. So what we need here is a variable, a temporary storage, for a collection of records. And I don't have that in my available resources, so I'm going to have to define it. And we'll select variable, and we'll say cur contacts, and we're going to make it a record type, and this is contacts again. Now right here, notice this checkbox, allow multiple values. This is important. If I don't check this, it will create a variable and just essentially store the first one that it comes back. And since that's sometimes what you want, you get your choice here. But I'm going to check this to enable collections. And so we're good. And now here it is, cur contacts, and you can see that it's a record collection variable and not just a regular record. And like I did before, I have to specify the fields that I want. So let me go and grab, let's see, what do? We have on call available, we have most expert, and we're going to want to grab the email address. I think that's actually all we need. Okay, so now we have to figure out how to send an email to every one of those records. And we don't know how many will come through. Could be 1, could be 50, because we don't know how many people are in that, how many contacts are associated with the account until the flow runs. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop. I'm going to create a loop. And a loop basically creates some flow steps that you can perform over and over and over again until you have processed all of the records or all of the strings or all of whatever collection you have. So I'm going to go add this loop, and I'm going to say loop through contacts. Wherever possible, try and pick evocative names that say what's going on. You know, right now you know exactly what's going on, so you might be in a hurry and just want to call it loop. But trust me, someday you're going to be coming back to this flow, and you're going to be happy if it's clear what you're doing. So take the time. This is your only documentation, basically. Process each contact and generate an email. So it asks for the collection. So loops only are designed to work with one of those sets, one of those collection variables. So we can pick it right here. So far, so good. We don't really care about direction. And the next thing is the loop variable. So the way that looping works is every time the loop cycles, it's going to grab one of the entries in the collection, one of the records in the collection. You need to create a temporary storage variable to hold the current contact each time you go through. So since this is a set of contacts, a collection of contacts, the loop variable's got to be a single contact. And the good news is we actually have one from the previous tutorial. We have this cur contact, which we used to use for doing a record query. And now we can just reuse right here. And so now I've got my loop in. Now, in order to process this, let me select this and hit the delete key. Okay, so let's rearrange this. What we're going to do is we're going to, after we retrieve the records, we're going to loop through them. And the way that looping works is that you have two arrows coming off of a loop element. And one of the arrows is the main loop, and then the other arrow is what happens when you're done. What happens when you're done looping? You got to keep moving, most likely. So we're going to set this first one to the main loop. This is the loop that happens for every item in the collection, whether it's 10 or 50 or 100 items in the collection. Okay, so we're going to loop through, and for each item we're going to send an email. Now, there's something that I got to do at this point that's super important, easy to forget. Flow should be smarter about doing this automatically, but it doesn't. So you have to close the loop. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it forward, and that's a little confusing. It's actually easier if you have something like, well, let's for example, it's easier to see if we just let's add another one of these emails. Oh, you know what? I picked Apex action. I really want a core action. We'll talk more about the difference later on. So I'm just creating a quick one to show you what this looks like. So what's going on here? Why does this suddenly say fault? Well, there's a couple things that are going on. First thing I'm going to do is delete this line. Delete this line. Every main element, I said that the loop element has these two special connectors. Most elements have a main connection that goes to the next thing, and then they have what's called a fault connector. And the fault connector lets you create a pathway for errors. And we'll touch on that more later. But for now, if you accidentally come across this, don't worry. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's just giving you a way to handle errors in the future. So I'm going to close the loop here. And now you can see it's a little clearer what's going on. We're looping through and coming back. But since we don't actually want to do that, we're going to do this. It's a little confusing looking. Okay, so we've got our loop set up. We've closed our loop. And I'm going to do a quick save just to catch stuff. Notice how fast Flow saves. Flow saving was slower in the past and it discouraged frequent saves, but now Flow is fast, so save frequently. Okay, so once again we need to update our email send to respond to the changes we've made. So if you'll remember what we did here, we set the loop variable to cur contact, and you know what? We may not actually need to change anything because from our last tutorial, this is already pulling cur contact.email out of the cur contact's temporary storage record variable. So we're in pretty good shape. Now let's take a look at our text template. If we go over here to our text template in Manager, you can see that it too is using cur contact. So because we reuse this, everything it doesn't even need to have to be changed. So what I'm going to expect is I'm going to send three emails. Now, if you remember, two of these don't go to my demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just so we can demonstrate what's going on here. I'm going to temporarily change Lauren Boyle and make her email address the same. Okay, so now we're basically, if this runs properly, we expect 2 emails to show up in my test inbox. So let's run it. Okay, let's go over and take a look at the inbox. And here we see that sure enough, we have 2 emails showed up, and you can see that they're not the same. You know what I didn't do, what I could have taken the time to do, is take the first name and the last name and put it in the email, and that would make it a lot clearer. It would say like, Dear Susan Ferris, and then this one would say, Dear Lauren Boyle. But in the interest of brevity, we're going to leave that as an exercise for the observer, and you can see that this was successful. So we now have shown how we can take multiple records and process them.